Train up a child. That's the theme of the sermon this morning. I connected this to what has been said earlier in the months because we have been looking forward to understanding God's plan. And what is God's plan, really? One of the very basic and important thing that we need to understand about God's plan is we have a responsibility to train up a child. Are you agreeing with me? Or are you just saying, really? You should. Because this is a basic principle of training and a basic understanding of what it is to be in the plan of God. So, training is important. Way back in the 80s, that means I'm a little old now, there was a guy in my previous church that he was really dreaming to be a pilot, a commercial plane pilot. And he built up his dream by getting interested of building up those replica of airplanes and collecting airplanes also, not fighter planes, but commercial airplanes. And one day, I was traveling from one spot in the Philippines, from Manila to my hometown, and this flight steward announced, "Good morning, everyone. We are so glad that this plane is being manned and being flied by the pilot name." And the pilot's name was called. And I said, "What?" And the name was George. I remember that name, and I remember the guy. So before I embarked from the plane, I waited for that pilot to get out of the airplane. And I said, George Kanya. Actually, his mother is living here in Jersey. And his father, who has become a judge, is also our godfather. And when I saw him, George, I thought you were just joking that you want to be a pilot. Now you are flying this plane. And we embraced each other, and he said, Nong, meaning Manong means an older brother. Manang is an older sister. He said, Manong, I am happy to see you, but I have to catch up with my next plane because he has to fly another plane at the other side of the airport. And I said, George, I am so happy that I see you. I'm so happy that you are now a pilot expert and very confident of flying this airplane. If you hear the name Captain George Kanya, that means that's the man. My point of saying that is when you go to the airport and then you embark and get into the airplane, did you ever ask about, hey, our pilot, is he a black man? Is he a white man? Is he a brown man? No, you don't ask about that. But you rather ask, is that pilot an expert, trained? And the same thing when we ask our leaders in the church. We ask them, is he trained? Is he equipped? And we close our eyes and say, Lord, I don't see any color in my leaders. Because we see them as people sent by God, and we use that feeling, we feel it. We can feel the message, the strength of the message, and we feel the conviction of that leader because we know that there is surrounding that leader a spirit that we can never understand, and that's the Spirit of God. So it started with that little vision, that training. So we just don't say, oh, our pastor is what? Is a leader. I forget about, he's my brother, okay? If anybody here disclaim that he's my brother, the one that's leading us on the pulpit is my sister. My sister from Nigeria. I have another sister also from Liberia. I have another sister from Ghana. I have another sister from Peru. I have another sister from Puerto Rico, or a brother from Puerto Rico. I have another brother from UK. We are brothers and sisters. Red, yellow, black, brown, white. According to the song, they are precious in God's sight. And Jesus loves all of us. Train a child. Why is it important to train a child? We'll start with the training. Flash that first picture, Maiwa, please. Remember this guy? Benjamin Solomon Carson. He grew up with just his brother and his mother. They moved from one place to another because their mother was just a helper. But you know what? Their mother, being a very simple woman, the secret was she could not read. She cannot read, but she was working in a place where they have a lot of books. And every time she gets home, she bring this book and said to the two sons, she said, "You read this and give me a report of what the book is saying." Like very authoritative and saying that you have to read this and give me a summary of the book. And so every day he do that, she do that, and then the sons were so obedient, and they're giving a report. And then all of their life they became very interested of books, and they keep reading instead of holding in their hands a remote control. They were holding books in their hands and reading it and summarizing it. But in this story, he was not a perfect man. He had a temper. That one time when he was bullied, this Benjamin Solomon Carson got a pencil, and he almost stabbed that young fellow bullying him. But God stopped him from doing it. And then in his testimony, he said, he went home and he was sobbing and crying, "Lord, why am I doing? What am I doing? Is it something that will please you? Is it something that will put you to shame?" And then after that, he realized that God gave him the temper, but that temper turned into a blessing. Instead of using a scalpel to destroy and kill people, he became one of the world's most celebrated neurosurgeon. He was instrumental, and his group also, not only him, he has a group of doctors that they were able to successfully separate conjoined twins. But the story is not that fast. Don't be fast. They also have failures in separating conjoined twins. But his heart was there. "Lord, what is it that you want me to do?" So instead of being violent with scalpel, God used the scalpel as a testimony that when you submit to God, whatever you have as your talent, God will use it. And to all of these testimonies, God has prepared him to do other things and separating conjoined twins. Doing it in Johns Hopkins Hospital and University. The story is very great. I love the story because he attributed this to God and the training that their mother gave them. Mind you, their mother was not literate. But she motivated these two young men to become great in their own way. Ain't that wonderful? The other thing is that he grew up, or both of them grew up, without a father. Sounds familiar? Let's take the second slide, please. The pact. I have the book I borrowed this. I want to have a copy of my own of this book. The pact is actually is the story of three young men in the 80s. And they were from Newark. And then somebody's asked me, is there something good that will come out of Newark? That's a familiar phrase in Scripture. They underestimated, and in the line I will borrow, the people were saying, is there something good that will come out of Nazareth? Indeed, there is. There is something. These three young men who lived in the ghetto of Newark, when it was still full of crime and drugs, it's infested with drugs and crimes, and the place was not really a welcoming place because they were also bullied. Actually, in one of the stories, they said that it was told that before they reached the age of 18, two of them experienced what prison is what it is. They were in prison before they reached 18. That was in the 80s. But, they did not succumb to peer pressure. Because most of their pals and their guys that they were with were drug addicts. They were not really interested of learning. They just want to have time out and then just be drugs. And nothing more. No reason for them to pursue anything. But you know what? These three guys made a commitment to themselves. And they said, we will not stop until we become doctors. The first place that they landed as their application for college was Seton Hall University. They struggled hard. And they created not a peer pressure from outside, but three of them started to make a pact. They made a decision. They made an agreement that three of them will be a peer pressure, but it will be a positive peer pressure. I want you to read this book. But they have a second book, The Bond. These three grow up with single moms. The pact. The Bond actually is a book that they want to reconnect with their fathers. It was hard. It was never easy because they have never had experience with their fathers. So they wrote a second book, The Bond. It's wonderful. So the same thing that is happening to us here today, we ask ourselves, why is it important for us to train our children? And what kind of training are we giving them? I would like to suggest some things. We have to train our children how to deal with their emotions. Emotion is something that is, we thought it's only women who are emotional. No. Women and men are emotional. A lot of times when you see a man crying, that means it's really serious. Serious. Let me share one of my experience. I have a pastor. Of course, when my father passed away, our father passed away, I really cried because I was working in the church that time. And I received a phone call after the service. I was having lunch with one of the members of the church. I was still single at the time. And I received a call and said, you have to come home right away. I said, what's the emergency? Your father is already cold and we will wait for you when you come home. I don't know what to do at the time, but my members who were supportive of my situation, they said, go home right away. So I was able to catch up the 5 o'clock boat because my island is like 2 hours away by boat. So when I reached home, I noticed people were gathering on the alley of our house and said, what's going on? What's going on? So I go straight to our house. I met my mom, my sisters, and a brother. Sad enough, because my other brother has a conference in Manila, he cannot come home. So it's 5 of us, because there are 6 of us. And plus our mom, we were there. And they did not take the body out of the house until I came. You know why? I was the junior. I am the junior. And I'm the pastor of the family. So my mom said, I decided to let him stay here, although he died in the morning, but I let him stay for you, since you are the junior. We have to train our children how to deal with emotions. Emotions that they will not only be emotional in one sense, that they cannot be rational. They have to have the level of rationality and emotional at the same time. There's nothing wrong with being emotional. There's nothing wrong to cry. Now let me go back to that story. When I learned that my other pastor, who I consider another senior pastor, died. I was here already. You know, I went to that corner and cried like a baby. I cried like a baby. And I said, Lord, why am I crying? I cried the same way I cried with my father, my own biological father. And the Lord said, son, it's okay. It's okay to shed tears. It's okay. Train up a child that they will know how to handle their emotions. Train up a child that they may know how to handle their finances. I always say this over and over in this church, and even wherever I go and preach, I will tell the story that you cannot spend 101 if you're only earning 100 a day, or you'll be short of $1 per day. I like the idea of one person who said, she was presenting a 50, 20, 30. 50, 20, 30. What does it mean? 50% of what you earn, you spend that, you give that, and you use that to cover for the expenses like rent or gas and insurance, whatever you have, medical insurance or whatever. 50% of what you earn. 30%, you spend it for something that you want to enjoy with your family. Of course, we want to have family time. So spend the 30%. And then buy something for yourself. Not just these raggedy things and, you can't afford that? Come on, it's only $5. Buy it. No, $5, you will not be bankrupt if you buy like a new coat. Buy it. If it's coming from the thrift store, buy it. So 50, 30, and the 20%, save it. Save it for the rainy days. Save it. That's what my parents, my mom being a teacher and my dad is a teacher too, always tell us, save for the rainy days. 20% only. So if you have $100, that means you spend $50, you spend that for all the expenses that you have in the house, food, insurance, gas, utilities, that's 50%. 30, use that to accommodate for the need of your wife, your children, for a special occasion. If there's no occasion, create an occasion. I said, honey, why are you taking me out? What happened to you? Did you eat something? No, tell them, honey, it's just my way of appreciating our relationship. It's just my way of saying that I love you and I love our kids. Make sense? 20% save it. Don't spend it. So we have to train our kids for finances. They need to know. Sometimes it's easy to spend if you didn't earn it. That's the bad part that I don't want to be an addict of like spending. Some people are, when they see, oh, this is good, let me buy it. The question is, do you really, really need it? Somebody is, look at me in the eye, people. Spend it wisely. Okay? Next, we have to train our kids to acknowledge God first. The God first principle. Because most people now say, there is no God. When people start to raise the issue of there is no God, you have to ask, what is the lifestyle of this person? Is this lifestyle aligned with the plan and the will of God? Or maybe there is something that he or she is doing that she's trying to hide and say, Lord, I don't want to see what I'm doing. And they say, there is no God. You cannot deny the God that exists because God never wink. He sees everything. God sees everything. So we have to train our kids, even ourselves, to let God first be the ruler of our spiritual life. So we talk about economics. We talk about social life too. We need to conduct ourselves socially. We have to train ourselves socially that we need to behave socially, that people will respect. And the moment they see us, say, oh, this guy, this fellow is standing for God. We cannot play anything for this person. Because when he's doing that, when you're practicing corruption, this person will say, no corruption for me. Let me put into contrast. This is 1980s. Okay? 3 doctors. One became an internist, one became a dentist, and the other one became an emergency practitioner, emergency doctor, right here in the area. But let me cite to you another situation. This happened last year. Also concerned 3 persons. June 15, 2024. When me and my sister were sitting in front of Whole Foods, my sister were talking over the phone to her friends. And all of a sudden, 3 young guys pass in front of us and snatch her phone. 3. I tried to catch up with them, run after them, but they were so fast. And my sister said, she was crying. It was a new phone that she just bought for herself. And in contrast, I see what kind of society do we want to experience? What kind of training have we given to the society that we are in right now? Is it a determination that we can be a blessing? These doctors became blessings to the community. Or somebody that will just easily snatch whatever you have and then run away without remorse, without even thinking that it may hurt you. Or if I continue and I pursued chasing them, it could hurt me either way. The contrast is the training. What kind of training are we giving? Now, let's go into the understanding of our church. What kind of training are we giving our church young people and older people? Next slide. Remember this guy. April 13, 1964, before I was born. I call this One Night, One Award. He is a Bahamian from the Bahamas, a Bahamian American. But he did not just stay as a Bahamian American, but he said, I'm going to excel. I'm going to excel in the field of films. In 1963 or 64, April 13, when the whole world was waiting for the announcement of the winner of the Actors Award, his name was called. The winner of this year's Best Actor Award is playing in the movie Lilies of the Field. His name, Sidney Poitier. My dear brothers and sisters, we look at ourselves now as people of God who wants to excel. And we want to excel really, not because we want it, but because this God expects of us that we should excel. We want to see the plan of God, and this is the plan of God. That Peddie Church should step forward and say, we will commit ourselves to the training of a child. He or she, we have to train the child. I like the translation that was given by the Amplified Version. It says, train up a child in the way that he, I also use the word she, will go. In close parentheses, there's a word that describes it. Teaching that child God's wisdom and will for his or her abilities and talents. Close parenthesis. And the last line, even when he or she is old, he or she will not depart from it. Let me underscore that line that has been in close parenthesis. Teaching. The training of a child starts with teaching. That's why the old school is a school that teaches. It's a teaching church. It's a teaching community. They teach children to understand and to comprehend God's will. Again, it goes back to God first. The wisdom of God. We need to inculcate the wisdom of God and the will of God. Because we have to understand that all of us were given abilities and talents. I do not believe that nobody from among us has talents. We all have talents. You don't say to me, oh, I don't have a talent. Really? Really? No, you have talent. I have a talent that may be special to your talent. You have a talent that may be special to other persons, but we all have talents. And that we have to harness this talent because this is part of the training that we will and will continue to pursue because this is God's plan for us. Question. What is it that you have in your hand as your talent? Maybe you cannot sing. Some people say, you cannot even carry a note. Some people, they can carry so many notes. But maybe you have the gift of friendship. All of us have the gift of friendship. All of us has a gift to just shake hands to that person. Or maybe we have the gift of prayer. But one thing I will suggest, we need to develop the gift of listening. I would like to extend to you this one thing. In 1964, it was just one night that the world was waiting for that announcement who will be the best actor. one night, one award. You know what? It happened again after like 27, 37 years after. The second man who was awarded one night, one award. You know what his name is? Denzel Washington. Now, what is the importance of these things? We talk about training a child, and when we train them, we want them to focus. When our children misbehave, we say, hey, go ahead. We give them the tablet. And sometimes we give them go use the cell phone. Or sometimes we say, take the remote control. Whatever, sort the channel. I was so frustrated one time coming down from New York, down here, and there was this kid who was so noisy. I mean, they were like a bunch of like family, 5 of them, in that chair next to us, next to Gigi and me. And the mother and the sister, in order to keep them quiet, say, instead of making them quiet, watching whatever in the cell phone, they became noise. It was a noise because they were singing. I thought it would be a silent train, but it becomes a loud train. My dear brothers and sisters in the Lord, train a child. Socially, they have to have some social grace. But spiritually, we need to emphasize the most important part of the day. God first. God first. Because when they become old, when they get older, you know what? What's the last line that is said on that verse? They will not depart from it. The training you receive in this church is not wasted. And I believe that. Because we have already produced a lot of great young men and women in this church. They have been preaching in this pulpit even before you came, Pastor. They were preaching. They were encouraged to preach. They were encouraged to lead. Now it's your turn to lead somebody else and train somebody else to lead. God first. That will be our basic principle for accomplishing God's plan for our lives. Let us pray. Train up a child. Train up not only the child, but the adults, Lord, in the way that we should go. Deciphering what your will, what your wisdom is in our life, so that our talents and our abilities will be aligned to your plan and your purpose. So that we will come out victorious. So that we will come out confident that we are sent into the world, as you have said, go into all the world. And we can be a witness. We can be people that will be confident of telling them that in the world of hopelessness, there is hope. In the world that there is chaos, there is an answer to it, and that's faith. And in the world that people continue to hate each other, there is a solution. God first, and let the love of God be the factor that will bring us all together as we continue to become witnesses of your grace and your love.